I'm having one of those where I fell asleep a little bit when I got
That sounds nice.
a little tired.
On group.
I tried to get it to load. Like my computer just like doesn't. The internet is garbage. It just like selectively works.
Let me throw it in the chat real quick. I put it in there.
Man, such garbage. I don't know how stuff works. It's trying to load it. Do we have a caption tonight?
No.
Okay.
No.
Yeah, so I'm on a freaking home. Everything's going great. And I can't get like Facebook to load. No sense. Like that link you sent in the chat is trying to redirect me to Facebook, and it's just grinding away.
Billions of people on Facebook right now, Andy.
You think that's the reason?
Oh, I'm sure. This is a really busy period for Facebook. Normally, the doors are wide open.
And then I also was trying to just load Cubs.com so I could remember last night's game, and that's not loading either. But hey, via the magic of the internet, we're looking at each other.
Right. And that weird thing again. I don't understand what the deal is with that, but it's like peaking, like there's some sort of distortion thing going in or something. But as long as I don't touch it, it's okay.
Yeah, that's strange. I was gonna bump up the font size on this for my old tired eyes. Doc?
Nope. Can't, because I'm not logged into that Google account.
Oh, okay, we've talked about that before, so I can do whatever I want with it.
Oh, nope. All right. Are you ready?
From Clear. Hi, this is Sean O'Hare from Clear Lake, Iowa. And this episode is brought to you by Ivy Envy Patreon supporters like me. Learn more at patreon.com/Ivy Envy. Next!
Hi, and welcome to this podcast. I'm one of your co-hosts. My name is Corey, and I'm joined by Andy. How is your week going, Andy?
Pretty good so far. West, our wives are presenting, and you're presenting, correct?
I am presenting. I'm standing in front of people and talking, which I'm not that comfortable with most of the time. So,
well, good luck.
I can do it on the internet, but I'm not.
Okay.
Yeah, unfortunately, the Cubs aren't going to be in town, so that's kind of a bummer since we'll be up there for the weekend.
Yeah. Beth already checked to see if there was a game that I could go to. That's
nope. Out on the West Coast. So if you're listening to this on Thursday and you are a Patreon supporter at the $5 a month level or higher, you are eligible for tonight's Patreon hangout during the Cubs Padres game, and you through Patreon and
Corey, at that you said tonight's.
If you're listening to this on Thursday.
Oh, sorry.
Dang it. Over here. Sure. Part of it, I'm just not used to this mic yet, and it sounds a little bit different, and I can't tell. There's something like weird coming through, and I got to figure out where it's coming from.
Okay.
I think maybe I found it.
It's me, Mario.
I think I found the mistake. This sounds dull to me. Let's see. Check 1, 2, 3, 4. That sounds a little bit cleaner, huh?
Yeah, put some studio magic on it.
Yeah. Bring up the highs. Bring it up.
Iowa. And this episode is brought to you by IVNV Patreon supporters like me. Learn more at patreon.com/IVNV. Next!
Hi, and welcome to this midweek episode of the IVNV podcast. I'm one of your co-hosts. My name is Corey, and I'm joined by Andy. How is your week treating you, Andy? We're halfway done. We're on the home stretch.
Yeah.
Right?
Today.
I was telling Andy before we started recording, I was driving on my lunch, and actually there was ice falling from the sky. I thought, well, if it's just raining normal, that can't be hail. That has to be sleet. And then I drove a little bit further, and it was snowing.
Classic May snow.
Yep. If you are listening to this on Thursday and you are a Patreon supporter at the $5 a month level or higher, you are eligible for tonight's Patreon hangout during the Cubs Padres game. You should have information that I sent out through Patreon. If you didn't get it, maybe log into your Patreon account, make sure it's in there. And while you're in there, make sure your credit card information is up to date, by the way. And so, tonight, log in and let's hang out and watch the Cubs and maybe crack open a brew or something. If that's what you do when you watch a Cubs game, whatever you crack when you're watching a Cubs game.
Yeah, hopefully it's something legit.
Right. Yeah, man. Andy, you and I are going to be in Chicago this weekend, and I'm really disappointed that the Cubs will not be home because I'm really getting the itch to go to a Cubs game. I've not been to one yet this year.
Yeah, when we found out we were going, is whether the Cubs were going to be in town, and my head drooped when I found out that they weren't going to be there.
But you know what? You just go to Chicago again. You got to find another reason to go to Chicago, I guess.
Yeah, we'll get there.
If you would have told me in spring training that the Cubs would start the regular season with 3 catchers, I wouldn't have believed you. If you would have told me that they carry 3 catchers through mid-May, I would have thought you were crazy. Well, I'm saying you. Andy, if you told me that, I would trust you. But if Andy, if you told me, I'd be like, dude knows what he's talking about.
The trade finally came through. I was starting to sweat them carrying 3 catchers, Wellington just kind of being an awkward third wheel type of situation where he gets, occasional playing time and, a number of pinch hits and not much else. So he was traded to the Mariners in exchange for relief pitcher Yoervis Medina. So like I said, just hasn't got much playing time. Really hasn't had that great of a season so far at the plate. So far this season, he was hitting 163 with a 234 on base percentage. It's not to say that he hasn't done some good things with the bat. Like, he has been a pretty serviceable hitter. He's been serviceable in other areas of his game, like his pitch blocking and just general athleticism. But of course, he's developed sort of a reputation for not being a very good pitch framer, and so now he's on his way out of town. This Yoervis Medina that they got is a 26-year-old relief pitcher. In the Mariners bullpen since 2013. Over that span, he has a 2.82 ERA. He does seem to be one of those relief pitchers that the Cubs seem to like, that have control problems. His walk rate this season's been pretty high. He's walked 7 batters in 12 innings pitched so far this season. At some point recently, whatever the Mariners AAA affiliate is out there. He does, though, strike out quite a few. Through those 12 innings pitched, he had 9 strikeouts. So I've read some articles. According to the MLB Trade Rumors article about him, his velocity has dropped since last season. He was throwing in the mid 90s, and now it's down to the low 90s. But here's a quote: he has a rather promising curveball. So he's going to start in Iowa, and no doubt the Cubs will use him at some point this season when they need another fresh arm. And like I said, he's young. He has 2 years of service time, so he comes with 3 to 4 years of team control if he ends up being a good piece for the Cubs.
Yeah, most about him is now that Wrigley Field has entered the 21st century, or the latter part of the 20th century, and we now have like things like walk-up music and things like that, which I'm sure irritates a lot of fans. But I think that their entrance music will be Funky Cole Medina, and so came out to with Seattle. So look forward to Seattle. So I do look forward to that.
Oh yeah, good times. That's I just hope he pitches a lot. Then I hope a lot of innings.
That's the biggest reason I want to see him make it up to the big league.
I want to.
There's been a lot of movement on the roster. On Monday, the Cubs officially activated Sayushi Wada. Dallas Beeler was activated from the disabled list and sent to AAA Iowa. They officially sent Brian Schlitter to Iowa. Phil Koch, as we mentioned on Sunday's episode, was DFA'd. Then on Tuesday, they called up Junior Lake from Iowa and selected the contract of Mike Baxter from Iowa. So you probably remember Wada from last year. He started 13 games. He had a 3.94 ERA. He's taking Travis Wood's spot in the rotation. So hopefully he'll be a little more effective than Travis Wood has been here for the last 2 or 3 weeks, basically the month of May. I don't think we need to talk about Coke, do we?
I think you texted Curtin and me that great news.
As I mentioned, he got called up. He's done pretty well in his time in Iowa. Obviously, this is a small sample size. He was there in Iowa for 22 games. He had 85 plate appearances, batted .250, struck out about 26% of the time, and walked about 14% of the time. That walk rate is obviously a big improvement. Were you gonna say something? Sorry.
No, I was just thinking, man, just adding a new wrinkle to his game. That's good.
Between AAA and the majors, quite a bit since 2010. Oh my gosh, my mind is blanking what organization he came from. Oof, man, I can't remember.
Is it the Mets?
For some reason, but I honestly can't. I honestly don't remember. There's your marked around between AAA and majors quite a bit.
Oh, it's been with the Padres, the Mets, and the Dodgers.
So while he was in Iowa this season, he had a slash line of 290, 377, 330. Basically, along with Junior Lake, he's going to provide some outfield depth. We'll probably see Baxter pinch hit since he's not a young prospect. He's 30. I think the Cubs will probably use him in that role. So yeah, it's been a pretty active few days since our last episode as far as the transaction wire goes. The bullpen, I think, is better by removing Phil Koch and officially moving Travis Wood in there, and Wada coming up to join. And also with these moves, we're going to see some outfield depth, especially with the absence of Denorfia and Matt Caesar being sent down to Iowa. So
right. With
on our episode pretty early.
Answer at the Double Deuce. That's Patrick. He rode into town on the pork chop, and Travis Wood now in the bullpen. That also made Phil Koch pretty expendable too. I guess that's all I wanted to say about that stuff.
This is being recorded before Wednesday night's game. We kind of thought maybe this might be a good episode to focus on some of those minor league prospects that we've been ignoring this season. The last lot of time talking about Bryant, Russell, and several of the guys that are still in the minors. And we really haven't had to focus on prospects much this year, just because the big league team is so interesting, and some of those names, Bryant, Soler, and Russell, are up with the big league team. So We thought that this episode might be a good one to use to check in on those players. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through the Baseball America top 10 list that they compiled before the season started. Obviously, there's two different sources for prospect rankings, but they're roughly the same players. So I just decided to use theirs. So a few of these at the top of the list have been called up already this year. We'll probably breeze through them a little more quickly. So Andy, why don't you go ahead and get us started?
Well, number one is Chris Bryant, and I had to do a lot of digging to find any information on him. Actually, make it to the bigs. No, he's as everybody knows. At this point, what, did you hear that popping?
Yeah.
I like basically don't have any open USB slots.
Okay.
But I could make one. Yeah, I should do that.
Just go ahead and from scratch.
Okay. There's this guy named Chris Bryant, and I had to do a lot of digging to find any information on him. But I was able to find out that he's actually been with the Cubs here for a while now. He's played 30 games with the Cubs.
I'll tell you, Andy, when he finally, gets up to a level where, when you finally learn more about him, wait till you see this guy's smile.
Oh man, city life. So anyway, yeah, he's doing well with the Cubs. His slash line is 290, 421, and 467. He just tore the cover off the ball, hitting a ton of homers in the minors, and so he went quite a stretch with the big league club with no homers, but his power is starting to show as he has 4 homers in a fairly short span of full rankings as far as within the National League that stand out. National League in on-base percentage and 4th in walks. In just 30 games, he has 24 walks, and he's second among. And so I found that to be pretty impressive. I knew that he had good plate discipline, but I didn't expect it to show up this strongly this early.
Yeah, and in case you missed the last episode on Sunday night, I talked about how he had at the time, and I would assume it still stands. He has seen more pitches per plate appearance than anyone else in Major League Baseball. You just, especially, I don't know. I that's one aspect of his game that I just did not expect.
Yeah, or like him seems to be perfectly content to help the team and take those walks when they're going to give them to him is a great sign to me. He at third base, he's shown some signs of life. I mean, he's made some pretty athletic and even bordering on incredible plays at times, but he is second among NL third basemen in errors with 5, and he sports a 94 fielding percentage. So he has, at times shown why they considered him to maybe be a little bit of a defensive liability at third base, but he's also shown a lot of athleticism. He's made some great plays.
He had a really good, it either was an incredible play or the camera guy was kind of slow. Because after he happened, I was like, well, maybe that was just kind of like a slow camera guy or something.
Yeah. But it's quickly becoming a favorite among a lot of fans.
You mentioned that because I had to go to Kohl's today. You're probably wondering where this story is going.
Yeah, I don't know. I have no idea. Like, is there going to be a clothes purchase in the future?
Did have to buy a shirt.
Okay.
Bought a nice button-up shirt. But when I was in there, I noticed there was so much Cub stuff. In the last couple of years, I usually go to Kohl's because like everything's always marked down, and so I'm always kind of on the lookout for Cub stuff and more Cardinal stuff in there. And like where we live is obviously, I mean, it's Cubs territory, but the Cardinals have had a more marketable team, I guess. But I went in there today and I could not believe how many shirts, how much Cub stuff was in there, and like Bryant stuff. They had Bryant jerseys. They had jerseys, and they had that said Chris Bryant, and then underneath it said "Welcome to the show." I was like, "What?"
About him.
I'm gonna follow up every player with a like a merchandise story about that particular player,
like the Kohl's status on like what they have. this player.
Here that I did not see at Coles of a player would be the number 2 prospect on the list, and that's Addison Russell. Even though we've seen him with the Cubs, I think some Cubs fans were surprised to see Addison Russell get called up as quickly as he did. I know I was surprised. I thought we might see Russell and maybe. I think it's important to remember that Russell, not only is he barely 21 years old, but he's also only played 77 games in the minors above the single A level. He's played in, or he only played, only played in 77 games in the minors above the single A level. He's played in 25 games for the Cubs this season, so that kind of puts it into context how little he actually played above single A. So I think that fact kind of puts some things like maybe his higher strikeout rate into context a little bit. He's striking out at a percent of his bats with the Cubs.
Oh, really? I didn't realize it was that high.
Yeah, so 36%. That will absolutely go down. I have no doubt that that's going to go down. He struck out 17% of the time in his 50 games with Tennessee last year. In his 11 games at Iowa this season, it was 15.2%. So, I mean, that 36% kind of stands out from what he's done at other levels. 21 years old, and he doesn't have a ton of experience at upper levels. And so, I guess you could look at it and say, well, 36%, that's better than what we saw from Baez. It's better than what we saw from, but that's going to go down. So, but he is showing his youth at times. But I've been impressed with Russell. I think, he spreads the ball all over the field. He hits the opposite way a fair amount. He's taken a lot of walks. He's walking 7.1% of the time, which is not a ton, but he wasn't walking much in Tennessee. Pretty impressive in the field, even though he's been playing a new position. And it's also second base is a position that it's not really easy to play if you're not used to the footwork involved. So
different angles, throwing angles and things like that. And then
turning a double play is a lot more difficult.
Right. We've seen a few times where he's kind of run into Starlin. You're going to be covering the bag and things like that.
Yeah. What we're seeing right now is kind of what you can expect from Addison Russell throughout the season. I think he's had some timely hits. Even though he wasn't getting a ton of base hits, he had a string of, what was it, maybe 8 or 11 hitting streak, even though he was getting like one hit in each game. But I just, he's so young, and I really do like him in the 9 spot. But I would suspect that we will see the strikeouts drop throughout this season. I think
Jorge Soler, and boy, the guy started out decently, but he's really scuffled of late. He leads the NL with 56 strikeouts in 166 plate appearances, which is a 33% K rate. But in his defense, his strike zone seems to be very broad, just generally speaking. In one at bat, it was the game that AJ Burnett started for the Pirates. I saw him strike out in an at bat where there were 4 pitches, none of which were in the zone, and he got struck out. And that at bat, he didn't swing at any of them. If you look at the K zone, none of the pitches thrown in that at bat are in the zone. And so it's really hard for a guy to get on track when he's having a good disciplined plate appearance and is being punished for it. And in fact, I even think that those type of at bats can lead to bad habits and bad tendencies cropping up. So still, I think that he will be able to adjust and make some adjustments and get back on track. But right now, he's a guy that just kind of needs to string a few hits together and start gaining his confidence back a little bit.
Yeah, I think he will. It's got to be. I trust. I think the coaching staff is probably. I think after that game, they probably showed him that at bat. Right on tape right away. Like, hey, look, don't. don't change your approach because
Right.
those balls
Exactly
the
what
right
you did.
thing. Yeah.
And in the midst of all that, he's still hitting like 265 or something. So it's not like I don't know. It's not like he's hitting sub 200 or something, and every facet or aspect of his game is terrible.
No. Yeah. So those are the top three, and the ones that we see on a nightly basis with the Cubs. The rest of these guys are still in the minors. Number 4 is Kyle Schwarber. And if you don't remember, Schwarber was the Cubs' first round pick last year in the draft. They took him in the number 4 spot, which it was a bit of a surprise at the Cubs identified him as the guy that they wanted, and they were able to sign him under slot, which left more money for the Cubs to spend on the pitchers that they drafted over the next few rounds. So Schwarber is with Tennessee. He's playing really well. His slash line is 321, 477, or I'm sorry, 447 and 634, which is pretty incredible. He's got 9 home runs. He's striking out at a 22% clip, which is below average, but it's expected from a guy with that much power, I guess. And it's not a terrible rate. I guess when I say below average, what I mean is it's a higher rate than average. I should word it then. And I think, when looking at Schwarber, I think what the Cubs do with him is going to be really interesting. If the Cubs want to keep him at catcher, it's going to take us a little longer to see him. They decide that his bat is too valuable to keep in the minors, and while he's down there kind of developing as a catcher, or if they feel that he's just not going to develop into the catcher that they want. I think we could see Schwarber with the Cubs this year. That wouldn't surprise me. But if the Cubs want to keep him at catcher, I think it will keep him in the minors longer. We just got rid of a third catcher, and his playing time would be pretty limited. I think this situation is going to be really interesting to watch. And the funny thing is, I wouldn't be shocked to see this thing go either way. But I think that we will find out over the next few months. I think if they decide that he's not going to be the catcher that they would like him to be, or like I said, if they just value his bat way more than they do him as a catcher, I think they'll move him to Iowa, see how he does, and then call him up if they need him later in the season. That's my hunch. But I honestly think this is probably the most interesting storyline in the minors for me this year.
Yeah. And it just seems like every time I listen to the Daily Northside report, he's hitting homers and having a huge impact on the games.
He is a very good hitter, and you add him into the lineup. If you work him into, if you can keep Brian at third base and you work Schwarber into left field, his bat would be, man, you had that in there too.
That's ridiculous. Yeah. Guy that you put in our notes is CJ Edwards, and I couldn't find anything on this guy. I figured out what you meant was Carl Edwards Jr. He hasn't started any games this season because the Cubs moved him to the bullpen. He's appeared in 11 games with the Smokies. And in those 11 games, he's given up 7 earned runs in 19.2 innings pitched. Over the course of those 19.2 innings pitched, he has 30 strikeouts to only 15 walks. I know he kind of got off to a little bit of a rough start, but it seems turned out a little bit lately. He's finished a few games, and he's picked up 3 saves also in the process. So he's another guy, like, I wouldn't be absolutely shocked if he continues to lock it down there, that he could maybe even show up in the Cubs at some point.
Yeah.
So I think that the Cubs maybe did the right thing in switching him over to a relief pitcher for now. He's shown the tendency to be a little bit, have some durability issues, and so he is a weapon, and they want that weapon to be available to them, and so that's perhaps their line of thinking at this time.
I mean, we've seen the Cubs recently really kind of struggle in the bullpen and have some depth issues at the bullpen, and you work in. I was kind of thinking about this too. Boy, that thought flew right out of my head. I guess I wasn't thinking. Make that went. Yeah, I think you bring him in if that's what I kind of I think that's probably what they're doing. And if they're in contention in August and September, you add him in there, and suddenly your bullpen gets quite a bit stronger. I think because he can just in an inning or two and just kind of lay it all out there, and
Sure.
maybe not have to worry about all that durability stuff quite so much.
Right.
Carl?
No, to the next.
Kenny. And other than Bryant and Russell, Billy McKinney is the only prospect to get moved up a level so far this season. We're only a month and a half in. McKinney came over with Addison Russell in the Jeff Samardzija trade. He's 20 years old, an outfielder. He was a first-round pick by the A's in the 2013 draft. Started off the season in High A Myrtle Beach. Did not last long there. He played in 30 games. Had a slash line of 340, 432, 554. He struck out in just 10 and a half of his at bats, and he walked in 13 and a half. So he's drawing more walks than strikeouts. He's only been with Tennessee now for a handful of games, so there's not too much to glean from that. But his walk rate and it is about the same, and his rate has actually dropped. But like I said, it's just a handful of games. He's obviously young, and I'm not a smart enough baseball mind to look at what he's doing now and kind of project his career path. But he's playing well, and the Cubs probably hoped that they could move him up to just another kind of. I think a lot of people kind of saw Billy McKinney as like just a throw-in in that Jeff Samardzija trade that he was going to be and things like that. And he was doing remarkable things at the highest levels of the minor leagues. And it is kind of hard to look at some of these guys that are only, we're going to touch on guys that are as young as 18. It's hard to look at that, but it's still impressive to see what they're doing against, players their own age and at those levels. So
in Double-A, and that's fitting because his name is Albert Almora. In 30 games, he has a slash line of 276, 315, and 353. I was thinking after we saw him in spring training, Corey, that he would come out of the gate just killing it, but he's had a bit of a tepid start in Double-A. In today's game, he had a violent collision with Bijan Rademacher, but going for a ball in left center field. And apparently they were both able to walk off the field without assistance, but it was kind of one of those plays where you would see it and assume somebody sustained an injury at least. Buddy Bailey was quoted as saying that they would know more about their status tomorrow, but he expected them to be playing again within the next couple of days. So
after the game or after he went out.
Oh, did he?
Yeah, he tweeted something about how he plays the game hard, something like that.
Oh,
this isn't Almora was on the DL for a week earlier in the season because he sustained a concussion diving for a ball. So,
yes, puts his money where his mouth is. Average go up a little bit. I'd like to see that OBP go up a little bit, and I expect it will.
Anything else on Almora?
No.
Number 8 is Gleyber Torres, and Torres was part of that big 2013 international group that the Cubs signed and spent a lot of money on. Yes, Gleyber Torres is another shortstop. The Cubs seem to be determined to keep the plethora of shortstops into the next generation. He's extremely well in the Midwest League for South Bend, and he's 18 years old, which is kind of crazy. I guess he was 16 when he signed with the Cubs. And yeah, so his slash line is 336, 422, 425. Obviously, he does not have a lot of power. I am not a scout, but at spring training, and I think we talked about it on the podcast at the time. To me, he kind of had a body more similar to like Addison Russell. That was kind of like what his build looked like to me. That said, and so I guess what I mean by that is maybe a little bit smaller frame. That said, some guys really fill out between 18 and 22, and power is something that he could develop in the minors, although I don't think he'd ever be considered a power hitter. And I'm going to keep saying it, but he's only 18. And just today, he ended a 24 game on base streak. Crazy. And
Wow.
did I mention that he's only 18? He's only 18.
No.
Okay. He's 18. And obviously there's a lot of development that needs to take place. I don't see any reason for the Cubs to fast track him, especially considering he's a shortstop. So if you're in the Midwest, my suggestion would be to take advantage of the opportunity to see him with prospects like Torres, West League. And you're from around here, you're really not going to get to see them again until they're in AAA, which is 2 or 3 years from now. I as long as he is not promoted in the next couple of weeks, I'll actually have the opportunity to see him when South Bend goes to Burlington and Peoria. So I'm got to see him, one at bat at spring training that was over on a backfield. And so that's all I've been able to see. So I'm looking forward to being able to see him, and especially see him in the field, just to see what he looks like out there.
And to see that South Bend doesn't come to the Quad Cities this season. I was really hoping they'd make it out here so I would be able to go see them play, but unfortunately that's not the case.
And we can discuss this later, but they will be in Burlington on a Friday night. I'm planning. We're going to go over there for that. So if you're interested,
oh,
down there, and then they're playing that weekend in Peoria, which the Sunday game is the only one I can make for that series. So I will get to see them twice this season, unless I happen to get over to South Bend.
League team than the big league team.
Yeah, and it kind of, I mean, I live within an hour of 3 different Midwest League affiliates. But what sucks is they're in the Western Division, and with the Cubs moving, and the Cubs have been in the Western Division, for as long as I can remember, with Peoria and King County.
Well, that brings us to number 9 on our list, which is.
I'm almost positive that the Midwest League All-Star game is in Peoria this year.
Oh, really?
Exactly, but yeah. Anyways, go ahead. Sorry.
Well, yeah, I need to go to that if that's going to be the case. At any rate, number 9 on our list is Pierce Johnson, and he strained a lat muscle in spring training. So he's been working in Arizona, and as far as I know, has not been assigned to an affiliate. And according to a piece by Patrick Mooney that was written actually quite a while ago now, in early April, the Cubs are being cautious with him. I wasn't able to find anywhere that he had been assigned to an affiliate at all yet. I'm trying to get him into game shape, I guess.
So if anybody, I know someone asked that either on Twitter or Facebook, I don't remember, asked us. Oh, I think it was in our Facebook Patreon group, but I don't really know. So if you're listening and you know any more about Pierce Johnson, actually that would be a great reason to either call the show from within our you can download the free IVNV iOS app, and you can call the show from in there, or you can call it directly, and I'm trying to find the phone number right now. You can call 309-517-04. That's our phone number. It just goes to a voicemail. And so, yeah, if you have any information on Pierce Johnson, or if you have any comments on anything that we talk about on this or any other episode, we've said that we will play those voicemails of your guys' takes on things, or any opinions that you have on